Before All Elite Wrestling, the Elite would hold the largest independent show in history, All In, which turned out to be the precursor to the upstart promotion. The event would see many stars showcased that would end up with an AEW contract, with wrestlers like MJF, Hangman Page, and Britt Baker leading the line for AEW going forward. With that said, there are many wrestlers that would not become All Elite, whether it was due to signing with WWE or in some cases because of high-profile controversies. So with that said, let's look at every All In wrestler that didn't sign for AEW. And if you want to see more list-style content in the future, make sure you drop a like on the video to let me know, and make sure you subscribe with notifications turned on so you don't miss any future videos. For the first entry, let's take a look at some notable mentions who didn't technically sign official AEW contracts in the end, but have made appearances during the promotion's lifespan. There were two New Japan Pro-Wrestling stars working the event that eventually walked through the quote-unquote forbidden door as of late, with Kazuchika Okada and Rocky Romero both appearing in AEW whilst under contract with New Japan. On top of this, Arrow star Stephen Amell would impress in a match against Christopher Daniels at All In, and whilst he hasn't wrestled in an AEW ring, he did accompany Cody Rhodes to the ring at Revolution 2020 in his match against MJF. Both Tommy Dreamer and the Hurricane, who were in the All In pre-show Battle Royal, have both made brief cameos in AEW whilst having no official contract. Finally, there were several appearances at ringside during matches throughout the night, such as Josh Segura, Road Warrior Animal, Jeff Jarrett, Sam Shaw, Sean Davari, and Tim Storm, with none of them ever appearing in AEW. And with the notable mentions out of the way, let's take a look at the main All-In stars that didn't sign with AEW. The BRISCOES have long been regarded as one of the best tag teams out there, and given their history on the independent circuit, it only makes sense that they would find a role at All In taking on SCU during the pre-show. This said, despite AEW boasting probably the best tag team division in the world, the BRISCOES have never been a part of it since the company was formed the following year. And the rumoured reason for this? A series of homophobic tweets made by Jay Briscoe years prior, which have led to him being blackballed by someone higher up in Warner Media. They have, however, appeared as part of Tony Khan's incarnation of Ring of Honor, perhaps a sign that this could change at some point in the future. Moose was one of a series of cult favourites who showed up during the over-budget Battle Royal during the kickoff show to All In. But for as popular as he was with fans on the nights, he would never make the jump to AEW, as he would instead decide to stay with Impact, rising so high up on the card that he would become the brand's world champion in 2021. As a side note, in June 2021, Moose did wrestle then Impact World Champion Kenny Omega inside an AEW arena at Daly's Place. However, the match would air during the broadcast of the Impact Against All Odds pay-per-view, meaning it wasn't technically an AEW match even though it took place inside an AEW ring. Another former favourite that showed up during the Battle Royal was CHEESEBURGER, who had made a name for himself prior to All In as one of the rising stars of Ring of Honor. So when it came time to decide where his future lay after AEW officially formed, the New Jersey native would stay loyal to the promotion that made him, although it is unclear if he even had an offer on the table. He would ultimately remain there up until this day, even after the Tony Khan takeover, having also worked under the ring name of world famous CB. It was fitting that Jimmy Jacobs would appear in the All In Battle Royal, as it was maintaining his association with his old indie friends, which ultimately cost him his job on the creative team with WWE in 2017, when he got involved in the Bullet Club invasion of Raw outside an arena. Unfortunately though, his one shot at All In would never lead to a full run in AEW, as instead he'd continue working as a backstage producer and occasional on-screen presence at Impact. Whilst many would have assumed that Punishment Martinez's appearance in the All In Battle Royal would have led to him working with the Elite again afterwards, this never came to pass for the simple reason that later in 2018 he would sign with WWE. There he's been rebranded as Damian Priest and has found a fair degree of success, with him currently being one of the most focused figures in the company's midcard as part of the Judgment Day, alongside Rhea Ripley, Finn Balor, and formerly Edge. Jordynne Grace was the lone female present in the All In Battle Royal, but despite breaking through the gender barrier, she wouldn't end up being part of AEW's fledgling women's division when it formed the following year. The reason for this was that she was simply having too much success over an Impact, with her becoming a two-time women's world champion between then and now. Long considered a great creative mind for wrestling, Bully Ray may very well have been a great asset for AEW had he joined them following his part in All In's Battle Royal. Given he was working for Ring of Honor at the time though, his loyalties would ultimately remain there, and this would cause him to never to jump over to Tony Khan's promotion. He now works for the National Wrestling Alliance. With that said, he does in fact interview the AEW president on Busted Open Radio on a weekly basis. Flip Gordon was considered a shoo-in for a run in AEW given his friendship with the Elite, as well as his part in the Being the Elite series, being part of one of the most prominent storylines heading into All In. But despite winning the All In Battle Royal, we would never see him become All Elite. The reason for this? Well, he, like a few others on the list, chose to remain loyal to Ring of Honor instead, although some of his more controversial views that he's posted online probably haven't helped endear him to the management office in Jacksonville. Regular indie figure Matt Cross would get the honor of having a one-on-one match with MJF at All In, but even though he put on a good performance that night and even secured the win, he would never make the jump over to AEW when they formed the following January. Since then though, he has continued to work as part of both Billy Corgan's NWA and Court Bauer's MLW, so at the very least he's been kept busy in the meantime. In 2018, there was a general feeling that Tessa Blanchard was going to be the next big breakout female star in wrestling. She has gone on to become the first female Impact World Champion, remaining in the promotion until mid-2020. But even though she would win a women's fatal 4-way match at All In, reported backstage attitude problems would never see her picked up by AEW, with her seemingly currently blackballed from the industry altogether. Given Chelsea Green's close relationship with Britt Baker, it's a surprise that she never made the jump to AEW. Despite being part of the women's fatal 4-way that night, she would instead sign with WWE before the formation of AEW. She has since been given her release, but she would end up signing with Impact as well as making appearances in GCW and many other promotions alongside her real-life husband, Matt Cardona. And the last female at All In who never showed up in AEW was the final wrestler in that 4-way match that included Britt Baker. When it came to Madison Rayne's lack of appearances in AEW, however, it wasn't like she didn't have job security elsewhere. No, having been a long-time member of the Impact roster prior to this, she seemed only too happy to continue on working there in the years that followed, joining the likes of Chelsea Green and Jordynne Grace in the process. Nick Aldis had arguably one of the most memorable matches at All In when he defended his NWA World Heavyweight title against Cody Rhodes during the main show, a match which he lost. But while he would lose the belt that night, making Cody the first ever second-generation holder of the NWA World title, he'd win it back soon thereafter. From there, he'd remain loyal to Billy Corgan's promotion, acting as their modern-day Ric Flair-style traveling champion before he eventually lost it to Trevor Murdoch in 2021. Given the success that Orange Cassidy has had in AEW, it really wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to imagine that Joey Ryan at one time would be a big hit there. But whilst his comedic Lothario character might have gone down well when he showed up at the end of Hangman Page's match with Joey Janela at All In, it's since developed far different connotations following the allegations made against him by a number of women in the industry. So don't expect to see him on TBS or TNT anytime soon, and I don't think Tony Khan was a fan in the first place. Of course, Joey Ryan wasn't the only one whose career would be torpedoed by the speaking out movement, because despite being an actual member of the Elite, Marty Scurll would never make it to AEW either. And whilst initially this was due to him still being under contract with Ring of Honor, he would choose to stay in ROH as the booker as well as an in-ring talent, turning down the opportunity to join his friends in AEW. Of course, once it was revealed that he had inappropriate relations with a drunken 16-year-old sometime prior to this window quickly closed, with him now relegated to minor indies across North America and Europe. Out of anyone on the list, it's KOTA Ibushi who has the closest ties to the Elite, with him being a former tag team partner of Kenny Omega for a number of years, with an appearance in AEW being long anticipated. Despite teaming with the Young Bucks at All In though, his recent falling out with New Japan management has left his career in limbo, with it being currently unclear if he'll return to the ring at all at this point. He has expressed his loyalty to New Japan in the past, so it's a difficult one to call at this point. As well as Ibushi, another part of All In's 6-man tag main event was Bandido, whose acrobatic style seems like it would fit perfectly with AEW. And whilst he's never shown up on TNT or TBS, instead choosing to remain with both CMLL and Ring of Honor, he did make an appearance at this year's Super Card of Honor under Tony Khan. So he has at least shown up on a Khan-promoted show, with there being hopes that he could show up in AEW at some point in the future. During the early days of AEW, Rey Mysterio would have undoubtedly been a major get, being arguably one of the greatest luchadors of all time and a former WWE champion to boot. He had and still has huge star power internationally. Ultimately though, despite being part of All In's main event, he would instead choose to sign with Vince McMahon's WWE later that year, with the general consensus being that this was done so he can get his son Dominic's foot in the door in the process. His deal with WWE was initially a pay-per-appearance deal, although he would later re-sign with the company, turning down a huge offer from AEW, meaning there certainly was interest at one point. And before you go, make sure you check out the truth behind CM Punk's secret wrestling returns before AEW.